Great. Well, I'm probably not going to stand behind the podium for very long because, one, I'm short in stature, so I can't see you. But good afternoon. I hope everybody's enjoying the conference so far. And I'm here really to kind of talk about or share a brief snapshot of a case study where Birch Aquarium at Scripps was approached by Google to explore and kind of assess their Hangout platform. How many of you are familiar with Google Plus Hangout or have used it before? Okay, so a majority of you. I was in the minority. I was familiar with it, but I had not utilized it for personal use or professional use. So when Google approached us, we kind of had to think a little bit differently about what we did and why we did things. And that was really why I wanted to come today and share with you what Birch Aquarium is kind of thinking about and how we're connecting to our audiences in a different way. So with that, I'll give you a little bit of introduction to Birch Aquarium at Scripps, for those of you who aren't familiar with it. We are part of the university system. We're part of Scripps Institution of Oceanography. We are their public outreach center, and so we accomplish a lot of the public communication, the interpretation of their research, and what's going on at the institution through our aquarium, which is both a very traditional aquarium but also a science museum. And so our mission is to interpret the science that's happening down at Scripps, to provide ocean and earth education, as well as promote conservation. And we have done this very well for a long time through our traditional brick and mortar building. We are a destination. We want our audiences, both school and public, to come to us because of our natural environments, our dynamic exhibits, and our live animals. But as we look at our audience and the shifting landscape of learning and education, we have to think differently about what we do and who we are. And so as we think about our kind of four walls and what we want to do, it was challenging us for us to kind of think about how do we get out of these four walls. We don't have a unique distant learning program ourselves, and so we've been capitalizing on other opportunities. And so when Google came to us with an opportunity, we kind of jumped at it with an opportunity to utilize a platform we hadn't used, to utilize technology that's not highly advanced, and to hopefully tap into an audience that is well beyond our traditional reach. And so that's what led us to our program with Google Hangout. We were one of about 15 institutions through the Association of Zoos and Aquariums that Google approached. And they approached us because of our educational expertise and our science expertise, but also because they thought we would be attractive to students and schools. And honestly, you know, who doesn't love fuzzy furry animals and those with scales in the water? It was a kind of a no-brainer. But they also really wanted to tap into the informal institutions, museums, science centers, zoos, and aquariums for which schools and children are trying to get access to, trying to be able to explore and experience, but are really challenged with transportation, the budget to be able to get there, and proximity. And so some of these places within rural America and within some of these suburban cities, it's hard to get to your local aquarium, your museum, or your zoo, if you even have one that's local. And so they wanted to leverage what we had to offer and provide it naturally. But they also wanted to find out how they could promote their Hangout platform, which essentially, for those of you who didn't, I think there's maybe one or two who didn't raise your hand, is a video chat platform. And so groups can get together, individuals can get together. It's about 10 people that can get online, see each other, have a conversation. Our conversations happen to be learning conversations. And so, as I said, as we got approached by Google, we really wanted to jump on this opportunity and find out what we could do with this and how we could kind of expand our reach and audience. So these were some of the things that we really wanted to do. And as you see at the bottom, we have 4 Hangouts that we kind of scheduled and planned for ourselves. One is pending. We've accomplished 3. We've kind of run the gamut of highly successful cheers and high fives all around to face in our hands, could not believe what happened. So I hope that's, you know, what we'll bring to the surface today, but also talk about the benefits of trying this out from an informal institution, but also working with schools who are also having the challenge of working with this platform, which is free and easy, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's user-friendly. So as we kind of looked at some of our successes, and as you look at these, some of them are probably obvious. We had lots of teachers that were interested in participating with us. And Google helped to find these schools. They have a lot of school partnerships already. They are kind of have their hand in the educational realm already. So we were capitalizing on them finding some of these national audiences, but we also pulled from our local audiences as well. And teachers were really interested in being part of what we had to offer. And they really wanted to be part of those hangouts. So that was exciting for us. The students, when we were engaged with them during the hangout, they were lively. They were asking questions. We could see their body, you know, and their language that was happening with the chats between each other, but also, you know, the cheers and the hurrahs and getting up and coming to the computer to ask questions. So we recognized that they were engaged throughout the whole process, which was important for us. We didn't want to be a talking head, and we didn't want them to be lost in the translation of what they were supposed to be exploring. The teachers also really wanted to commit. They spent a lot of time figuring out, what's Google? Do I need a Google account? Where do I get a Google account? My school has a Google account? How do I get on that account? What are you talking about? What's a platform? Oh, I have to sign up for email? There was a lot of conversations happening, but they were committed. So they worked with the Google organizer as well as ourselves to figure out these kind of technology, you know, hitches, so to speak, but also to find it within their extremely busy times. And that, to us, showed that there is an audience that really would like to engage with us, and they're willing to sacrifice some of their precious time to figure out how to make this happen. And so that, for us, was a motivator to do the same. And then, of course, after the sessions, the students and the teachers really wanted to engage with us. We got lots of letters and drawings and all these wonderful things that kind of let us know that the conversation was still happening well beyond the end of our own hangout, which for us is great. Those of you who have children or have been in those education realms, getting those letters are the best thing in the world. You know you've kind of made an impact on them. So for us personally, along with what I've already mentioned, is that our staff really got to explore a platform that we hadn't used before. We have a Google Plus page for the aquarium, but we had not used it in the way that we've used it for the Hangouts. We hadn't explored what it can do for us. So I will honestly say our staff kind of were dumbfounded when we looked at it. We're like, this is really easy. We've been on Skype, but how does this work? And what are the few buttons that I need to push? And getting started, and the fact that we could broadcast live and capture our Hangout was of interest to us, but it was also challenging. So though our staff is not very technology advanced, they were willing to put in the time, as I said, and really kind of put themselves out there to admit this was a learning process. With that, we gained a lot of valuable skills. Patience, and as you were talking about critique and reflection, we got a lot of that back, and we accepted it, made us stronger, and we're moving on. But without that, we wouldn't have known where our failures were, where we could pick ourselves up and improve, and where we really hit the mark. So it was important to have that feedback and that reflective process. We also learned a tremendous amount from our peers that were also going through this cycle with us. The presentations they put on, the engagements that they used, what worked for them, what worked for us. And we learned what we didn't ever want to do, and we learned what we wanted to achieve. So some of these partners were quite advanced in using the technology, and some of them were like us. They were struggling with it. They didn't necessarily know how to engage audiences, to keep them with us, and to kind of have that continuing conversation. So this is a quick snapshot of kind of us doing our Hangout. The group in the middle is a small school from ACE Academy. These were all second and third graders. They were learning about sandy beach ecology and where sand is from. And we had sent them kits ahead of time, sand kits as well as some activities to run alongside us as we went. We really wanted to make this hands-on. It's what we're good at, it's what we're known for, and we didn't want to leave that by the wayside when we engaged in this platform and with this Hangout. So we mailed out all of these packets to the teachers. We asked them to prep some of it ahead of time and gave them a heads up of what our curriculum was going to be like and what to expect. And they were on board for us, and they really got their kids prepped, and the kids had a great time because we were learning with them, and they were actually using authentic objects. They were kind of having that hands-on manipulation of things that help them kind of concretely build new knowledge and assimilate knowledge that they already have. So these little guys were so cute because they were all very prepared with their questions at the end. They all had their sheets and, you know, Mrs. Evans, we would like to know where your Hawaiian sand came from. Did you go there? Were you on vacation? Can we go? So it was very fun to see them think about how to engage with us as well. So that brings us to the challenges. And there were a lot of them, and there still are, but it was well worth kind of figuring out and getting through some of this to be able to recognize what this technology, engagement, and process can do for us as an organization of teaching and learning, but also what this does for us as professionals and individuals. So on the school side, as I mentioned, a lot of teachers didn't realize what they have to get involved with, what they need to do to prep, getting online, setting up their own platforms, and really kind of being on cue to make this happen. The teachers were also having to communicate a lot with ourselves and the organizer, and with different time zones. We had students and teachers on the East Coast and in the central US as well as the West Coast. So people were negotiating these time zones, trying to figure out how can I get a hold of each other. For our own selves, as I mentioned, we weren't familiar with the platform. We struggled with it a little bit. We didn't necessarily have technology people that could walk us through it real easily, so we had to play with it. We had to practice with it, and that was a huge benefit. We also have the challenge of integrating and using our scientists, but we also have the problem of integrating and using our scientists. Some of them are extremely tech savvy, others are not. The hangout that went really rough for us was engaging a scientist who is awesome. He's one of my favorites, but he does not use his computer. He has great graduate students that help him do that, and that was one of our biggest downfalls, was we didn't practice, we didn't prepare with him as well as we should have. And so we kind of ended up with him not live on the Hangout and us speaking for him, which was a great learning lesson. And it kind of we figured out how to integrate our scientists in a better way and train them to work more closely with us as educators. On-air problem solving, that was something we hadn't really thought about. When you're on air and you have students typing in or teachers typing in, I can't hear you, I can't see you, what should I be doing, what's going wrong? That was something we weren't necessarily prepared for until we were into our second and third Hangout. We got much more proficient at being able to handle those stresses and realized you need a team when you're doing these things. It can't just be one person leading it, and just because you're a fabulous educator doesn't mean that you're really good at facilitating the behind the scenes of this technology. And that was something that was a little bit of a surprise to us. Seems really obvious now, but a learning lesson. The other things that we really wanted to do is kind of extend these new relationships and connections, and that's hard when you have teachers across the nation and they're waiting for the next involvement, or what can we do and how do we stay connected. So that's something we're trying to evolve right now. And here's another quick snapshot of that same hangout, the sandy beach, with us making our candy sand. So that was something that we worked with the students on. They had to break up Jolly Ranchers in containers to figure out the process of sand. Smelled really good. So I was glad that they got to have that in their classroom as well as we went through. So quick lessons learned. Practice, practice, practice. This was both for ourselves and the teachers. Using the technology, getting on top of it. Building interactivity. Again, as I said, we didn't want this to be a static program for the students. We're good at what we do, and we wanted to transform that into these new kind of distance programs. We don't want to lose what we're good at, but we also need to recognize how to change and adapt it. We wanted to keep it short and simple. Each of these Hangouts are about 20 minutes with a few questions in there, because we understand that their time is precious, but also watching something on a video can be distracting. It can kind of be fatiguing if it's not something you're conditioned to or you're used to for the classroom. We also had to be strategic. What did we want this to do for us? So this was a great pilot. We could play around with it and see what might happen, but now we really need to think about what needs to take place, how do we build in the technology, the training, the efforts that need to be put in place in order for this type of medium of education and learning to be as effective and as powerful as what we do on site with our dynamic environments. And our audience, our teachers in classes, need the support too. So recognizing that they need as much from us as we need from them. And then finally, and this again is kind of the obvious one, time, resources, and funds to be able to do this. So it is a free platform. It's very easy to use, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's free, or as I said, that it's very user-friendly. So those were just some of the things we kind of walked away with, and we're still walking away with, struggling with what's the best use of this, and how can we transform this for other facilities to be able to use this as well as us. So with that, this is our second hangout. This is one of our researchers, Dr. Hartman, talking about coral reef at one of our local classrooms, as well as a fellow coordinator and what we looked on the computer to ourselves. So with that, are there any questions about our kind of learning process or what we were up to and still up to?
Any questions?
It's the end of the day, right? Everyone's like, whew.
There's one.
Yes.
Was there an aspect of, was there homework, or, I mean, homework sounds funny, but
Right.
were there fun things that they got to do to warm up to it?
Like
or?
pre-post kind of experiences.
Yeah.
We built that into our first one. So with the Sandy Beach, we sent, as I said, the materials as well as some kind of pre-materials, pre-activities that they can engage in, getting familiar with language, getting familiar with the sand samples. We sent along a beach in a bag, which essentially was what you might find on a sandy beach, and they explored it. And it had, you know, once living materials, it had non-living materials, it had trash, it had all the things you might find on a beach or a river. Beach. And that was something we wanted them to think about. And then post-program, we had some other activities where they would go into Google Earth and figure out, well, where were all these sand samples from? What do they look like on a global map? How are they connected and how far apart are they? With some of these other ones that we did later, these are high school and middle school programs, and they were engaged in a long-term coral reef curriculum, and so we didn't necessarily have to bridge that for them with pre-post materials. It was already in existence. So we were able to kind of build off what was happening with these science presentations, more or less. And then the Arctic presentation, which is the one that didn't go so well, that was more for our public. And so that was kind of open to anybody who wanted to log in. And unfortunately, it just didn't run as smoothly as we had hoped it would be. Any other questions? Well, I appreciate your time this afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Kristin.
Yeah.
Well done.